Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dais, a podcast about the stories taking place in and around El Paso County, Colorado. I'm your host, Scott Anderson, and today we are focusing on El Paso County's annual budget. Fortunately, my guest today is an expert on all things numbers, from balance sheets to Sudoku. I am joined by none other than El Paso County's Chief Financial Officer, Nikki Simmons. How are you doing today, Nikki?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am struggling through the first part of the script, but we'll see if I can do better as we move along. Before we get started, though, I want to quickly add that if listeners are interested in more stories about people doing good in and around El Paso County, or hearing from county leadership about local government priorities and how they operate, you can find additional episodes of this podcast on your podcast platform of choice. But to get started today, Nikki, I was wondering if you could give us some background about yourself and how you ended up here at El Paso County.
So I have been with El Paso County for 15 years now. I am a CPA. Have a bachelor's and a master's from the University of Colorado in accounting, and started my career working at a CPA firm doing auditing. I'm a pretty nosy person by nature, so I loved auditing, loved going in and figuring out what's wrong with things, and then came to the county in 2010, and been here ever since. And I became the CFO about 4 years ago.
Great. And what are some of those responsibilities of the CFO?
As the Chief Financial Officer, I am the Executive Director of the Financial Services Department. We provide support services to the entire county for accounting, payroll, accounts payable, budgeting, contracts, and procurement. So kind of anything you think of to do with money, with a little exception. We have the Treasurer's Office here. They do all of our cash management and investing. So that doesn't fall underneath financial services, but anything else that has to do with money does. We manage the finances of quite a few governments. You think of it as the county, but there's actually a lot of small governments that we run as well. But the biggest part of our jobs is contracting and procurement, obviously making sure that we're buying things correctly with taxpayer dollars, but then the budgeting and then the after, right? So the budgeting and then the auditing, like the before report and the after report.
Mm-hmm. And so, as I stated in the open, today's focus for the conversation is going to be mainly on the annual budget, which we're in the process of going through that right now. Can you talk about that process and how it gets approved and some important parts of that process and how it takes place?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually start our budgeting process pretty early in every year. We start in March of every year. We use a model called a base budget model, where we start with the assumption that departments' base budgets will remain the same unless otherwise adjusted. So then we ask departments to let us know what their most critical needs are for their area, because they know their area better than we ever will. And the departments submit to us their requests for critical needs. And then we take those, we go through them, we make sure that we understand them as the budget office, and then we meet with county administrator to make sure that he understands them. And then we do a very collaborative process where we meet with the departments and offices, so the elected officials and the department directors, in big meetings throughout the summer, talking about what is important to everybody, what is helpful to make progress towards our strategic plan. Everything that we do in the county's budget is looked at through the lens of the county's strategic plan, because really the budget is a way to accomplish our strategic plan. And obviously our strategic plan is to provide low-cost essential services to our citizens in a way that they want. And so we work really hard to make sure that the money that we're budgeting helps us make progress on that strategic plan. Based on the conversations that we have throughout the summer with the elected officials and the department directors, we create what we call a preliminary balanced budget. And the preliminary balanced budget is administration's proposal to the Board of County Commissioners on what should be the budget for the following year. That responsibility falls within county administration, specifically the county budget officer, to come up with that proposal to tell the board, like, hey, your staff is thinking like this is what the budget should be, but then through an open, transparent public budgeting process, we are able to turn that budget in from being the administration's proposal to being the Board of County Commissioners' budget, because the authority for setting the budget falls solely with the Board of County Commissioners. And so We open up the public budget process with the presentation of the preliminary balanced budget in the beginning of October every year. We have a statutory deadline of October 15th to present that. And it just needs to be a balanced budget. A balanced budget means that the budget is revenues plus available fund balance is not more than the budgeted expenditures. Essentially, we're not creating a deficit where we don't have the savings to cover it. And so we present that in October. And then we hold critical need hearings where the commissioners can hear directly from the departments and offices requesting additional funding. And then we have one of my favorite days, which is the final direction hearing, which is where I get to do math in public. And so,
always dangerous for someone like me, but for you, I'm sure it's no problem.
I get to pull up a spreadsheet in front of everybody, and we look for direction from the commissioners. It's a non-action day. Other governments call it a budget markup session, a budget work session. We call it our final direction hearing. And we ask the commissioners for their proposals on what to change in the budget. So Commissioner A could say, I want to increase the allocation to this department for this reason and move it from here to here. And then I would look for two other commissioners to give me agreement that they think that that should be changed in the budget. And though we're not looking for action that day, we're looking for consensus, so that way I know when I bring the final document back with all those changes incorporated into it, that it's a budget that will pass. Mm-hmm. And so then in December of every year, and our statutory deadline is December 15th, we bring that back, and the commissioners vote on approving that, as well as setting the mill levy for the county, which provides the property taxes, which is about 30% of our overall budget, and does some other administrative things that day. And we move into the budget for the next year.
You said a lot in there that I thought was really interesting, but a couple of things that I wanted to point out specifically. You mentioned that the balanced budget, and it's in my notes here, so correct me if I'm wrong, equals revenue plus reserves that are on hand, right? So first of all, is that probably an oversimplification, but...
Yeah, no, actually I said, so it's reserves plus available fund balance.
Okay.
So same thing as reserves.
Okay, so that is why when we release the initial budget, it's possible that you might see that estimated revenues and estimated expenditures aren't the same number, right?
Absolutely.
Because those revenues that are held would cover that, I don't want to say deficit necessarily, but that gap, I guess, between those two. Okay.
Absolutely. So, and we use those funds, we have a policy on how to use those funds, and we can't use them for ongoing means or ongoing needs. And so it wouldn't be proper to use fund balance to cover adding an FTE or adding an employee for the next 5 years, because it's one-time money that will deplete over those years. But we use that funding to cover things like one-time expenditures, such as investments in facilities, investments in roads, infrastructure typically. And so you'll see that in this year's budget as well. We are looking at our fund balance to be able to cover some of those one-time expenditures. As a little bit of a side, El Paso County has a fairly healthy reserve. We, throughout this budget process, are targeting a 23% reserve, which is substantial in the way it will help us weather any sort of economic uncertainty that may or may not be coming. Trying to ensure that we have continuity of operations throughout the next several years.
So on that note, maybe not pointing out specific other municipalities or organizations, but what is kind of the general level that people like to keep in reserves? And you said our number's at 23. So what's like kind of the general operating number for folks?
So the actual best practice issued by the Government Finance Officers Association is 16.67%. That seems very specific, but all that is 2 months out of 12 worth of revenue.
Oh, okay.
And so that's the general best practice as a minimum. And so we are holding 23% ongoing. And we continually try to add to that how we add to that is underspending and one-time unanticipated revenues. So if revenues exceed budget and they weren't appropriated, then we drop them into fund balance. So our fund balance has been continually growing over the last several years. To a level where we feel like it's healthy, that we could sustain economic uncertainty.
Okay, very good. So wanted to move on. One of the terms that people might hear a lot as it revolves around government government finance and things like that here in Colorado, at least, is Tabor. Tabor, I do know, means Taxpayer Bill of Rights. That is one thing that I remember. But can you tell us a little bit more about what Tabor is exactly and how that affects El Paso County's budget considerations?
Absolutely. So Tabor was passed, I think, in 1992, but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But maybe quote me. And it essentially is a restriction on the growth of government. It's essentially trying to keep government the same size and not growing without a vote of the people. So the main thing that I think people look at with Tabor is that the government can't unilaterally decide to increase taxes on the citizens without going to a vote of the people. So a government like the county couldn't say, okay, we have a 1.23% sales tax. We want to have a 2% sales tax because we think we need more money. We're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to increase rates. So that's the primary component of Tabor. The other component of Tabor is actually a calculation to restrict the growth of government, even if the tax revenues would increase without rate increases. And think about that like, say that 1.23% tax from one year to the next may garner more money, or your mill levy on your property with property values increasing would get more money than growth would allow. And so to keep the size of government approximately the same, our revenues are not allowed to grow by more than CPI, which is the Consumer Price Index, and a growth factor. And that growth factor is, I think, supposed to like mimic population growth, but it really comes from construction growth. It's a number that we get off the assessor certification. That is the value of new construction minus the value of deconstruction divided by last year's assessment rate. And so it helps us know how much our community has grown construction-wise. So essentially, think about if we say we had $1 million of revenue, and then we had a 2.5% CPI, so we could grow by that. I'm going to do the math wrong. Is it $25,000? So you could grow that $1 million by $25,000 to 2.5% rate, and say there's another, say 1.5% construction growth rate. So that's another $15,000. So Tabor would tell me that $1 million at maximum next year could be $1,040,000. Okay. So if our natural economy had that grow, and I was going to bring in $1,060,000, I would have to refund that $20,000 to the citizens, or go to the ballot and ask for permission to keep it for a specific purpose.
So what has been the general practice with El Paso County as it relates to any overages that might exist, and what is that going to look like for this upcoming year?
So in the past many years, I think 6 or 7 years, El Paso County has just automatically refunded the overages that we've had. We have had an overage every year, I think since 2017. We, in the past several years, have refunded that straight to residential real property owners, trying to get it back into the hands of the citizens who actually paid it, and into residents' hands. That's done at a flat rate. So I think this year, going back, we're refunding about $4.5 million from 2024 overages, and that amounts about $19 per household.
Okay.
And so people will see that on their property tax bills as a one-time credit at the bottom. So it kind of gets blended in if people don't look at their statements because it's through their mortgage, things like that. But it is on that statement, just a little refund from El Paso County.
Got it. Very nice. So getting back to the budget or the process of it, what is something that you think would maybe surprise residents to know about the budget process or the budget itself?
Actually, speaking of Tabor, there's something there that's a little surprising when I tell people about it. Tabor is an overall revenue restriction. We have to count all of our revenue sources to come up with that cap. So we take property taxes plus sales taxes plus interest revenue plus any fees, fines, charges, things like that. But what a lot of people don't know is that when we have state revenues, where the state collects the taxes and it counts against the state's Tabor cap, then they mandate those services down to local governments, such as the county. That revenue counts again against our Tabor cap. So even if they fund that mandate, it counts against our Tabor cap. And we've run into situations where we have been at our Tabor cap, but also got a mandate from the state where we had to implement that service as well and tried to figure out how to absorb that into our Tabor cap while not impacting services that we otherwise need to provide to our citizens.
So how are you able to, I guess, proactively anticipate those types of issues that might come up with those state mandates that come down? And how is your team able to adeptly adjust or adapt to what that would do for the budget process?
Yeah, so we closely work with our government affairs department to watch legislation and changes in mandates, especially when the state is looking at fee increases. I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, they were making major changes to the highway user tax fund to try to increase road funding to local governments. And so at that time, I think they were increasing fuel taxes. That's when they put that retail delivery fee in place where you pay like 28 cents every time you have something delivered. And that goes into that highway user tax fund. But then more mandates on roads came with it. And so we actively monitor that stuff, making sure that we understand how that money is going to end up in our Tabor cap. We also work really closely with the state of Colorado. A lot of governments are de-tabored, which is where you go to vote the people and ask if you don't have to follow that revenue cap anymore. El Paso County has not done that, but we work closely with the state to manage that and the timing of grants. And so we've been able to proactively manage it throughout the years.
So for you, this budget process, you said, usually begins sometime around March for you. It's almost a year-long process for you and the team. What are some of the most rewarding and then challenging aspects of this budget process?
Yeah, and just a little aside, I always joke that I have no idea what year it is because we're doing the audit for 1 year, so we're closing 1 year, we're in another year, we're planning for another year, and so many times I know what date it is. Like, I know that today is November 3rd, but sometimes I'm like, is it 2026? Because I'm so used to planning the 26 budget, or am I in 25, and I continually write the year wrong, but not the date. And I do it more towards the end of the year, where most people, the beginning of the year, mess with the date. Yeah. I'm like always a year ahead.
That's funny.
But anyways, rewarding. One of the things, I think every department director hopefully does this, but I have an amazing staff. The budget team that puts together this budget, it's not me. It's a team that's behind me that hopefully makes me look good. And one of the goals we had this year was directly tied to the county's strategic plan, and that's increasing transparency to our citizens. The Board of Commissioners that I work for very, very much values transparency to our citizens and making sure that we are cognizant at all times that we're spending taxpayer dollars. And so this year, we procured a system called ClearGov, and we were able to create this budget book that is out on our website, and it helps the citizens and any end user of this report be able to dig through the finances for every one of our departments and offices. So you can go in and say, look at the communications department, Scott.
Oh, gosh.
And look, there's a little fancy picture of you all. And you can go in and look at the accomplishments for each department, looking at what they're working towards in 2026, what they're planning on spending their budget on, how many employees they have, their strategic plan goals. And some of the departments even have key metrics and KPIs for how they're doing against their own strategic plan. It gives some line level budgeting, so you know in each department how much they're spending on personnel, how much they're spending on training. One of the questions is like, how much is Parks going to spend on wildfire mitigation? Well, you can find that in this book. And so this book, super excited about it. It's brand new for us this year. We always filed a budget book to the DOLA, which is the Department of Local Affairs, in January of each year. So in January of 25, we filed the budget book for 25. Very manually done. It was in Word document, and it was took a long time to get together. This year, we procured this software, and we were able to get all of that done for our preliminary budget, which I think really helps engage citizens to provide feedback on the budget. When we open this up for public inspection, we're able to have that on the website. You can dig through the details and ask us tons of questions, and we can walk through that with you. So that's something that's been super rewarding this year. And it's also something, this budget book in the past has won awards from our Government Finance Officers Association about maintaining the utmost level of transparency to our citizens and showing the citizens how we're spending our money.
Yeah, that's really great. Except maybe the picture of me in there, you can probably take that out. We don't need that at all.
Looks fine.
Fine. Fine's actually probably the best compliment you can give me. That's great. So sticking with some of that budget process and talking about how this increases that transparency for our residents, right? Is there any other way that the community can engage with the budget process? And if so, what does that look like?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most important things is to reach out with your comments. All of our budget hearings are streamed live. The copies of them are posted on the county's budget website. We have every year public budget hearings. So citizen comments are welcome at any and all of our budget hearings. We've already held 2 of those budget hearings so far this year. Or actually, yeah, 2, sorry. We've held 2 of those budget hearings so far this year. We had our presentation of the preliminary balanced budget, which I refer to as the Nikki show, because the commissioners have to listen to me talk for hours. And then we had our critical need hearings already. This year there weren't very many of them because, as you're aware, this year's budget's a little bit lighter in increases than we've had in the past couple of years. As an aside, still pretty proud of that. I know a lot of organizations across the state are experiencing budget shortfalls. They're doing furloughs, cuts, things like that. El Paso County is not recommending any of those things in our budget. And that has a lot to do with the budgeting process that we've used over the last few years and making sure that we're conservative in what we're doing. Tomorrow, which I realize this podcast will probably air after tomorrow.
The day after tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
So tomorrow, November 4th, is our what I call our final direction hearing, which I mentioned earlier, which is where I get to do math in public and where I get to ask for that. So that's happening tomorrow, where the commissioners will take the budget from being administration's proposal on what should be in the budget to being the commissioner's budget and something that they're willing to adopt in December. Past history, there's not a lot of changes made at that hearing, but that's definitely where the commissioners take any citizen input that's been given, weigh that against the needs of everybody else, and make those final decisions. And then citizen comments are absolutely welcome at that hearing as well. And then we have our final hearing in December. The final hearing in December, while citizen comments are also welcome at any time, there's not a lot that can be changed at that point because we're adopting a final package. Also, I will say the Citizens College is a great place that I always have to present to the Citizen College. I say have to, I get to present. I actually have a lot of fun with it. I'm not your typical accounting person. I joke around a lot, and we make a really engaging presentation to the Citizens College, help them understand, like we kind of try to put them in a seat of a citizen or of a commissioner for the day and say, okay, here's all the stuff you have to weigh. I mean, it's a quicker exercise. But it's like we have all these mandates and then we have all these requests, but this lower amount of money, how would you balance this budget? And so it helps people understand what it is we do and how we're able to balance that budget.
Awesome. I feel like we're going to be able to cover a lot of ground here, but I just want to give you the opportunity to add anything else that you think would be important for people to know about it, whether it's about the budget specifically or about any of the work that you do or the finance team in general.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have much else to add. I am really proud of this county for what we've been able to do. A lot of credit goes to our leadership, our commissioners, and our administrator over the last couple of years to set us up in a position. I get continuous calls from across the state of like, hey, I heard you guys aren't making cuts. How are you doing that? And it has a lot to do with the work that we've done over the last couple of years to ensure we didn't have a budget with FTEs or full-time employees that we couldn't sustain. I will say that my boss, the county administrator, every year has been very clear on, like, I don't ever want to have to walk an employee out the door because we don't have enough money to pay for them. And so making sure that anything we're doing is sustainable through what we called economic uncertainty or a possible slight recession. Not knowing if one was coming, but he wanted to make sure we were in that path. And we've done that. So super excited about that. And I welcome any citizens who want to reach out to me, and I will talk about the budget for hours. It's like my favorite thing. I'm a big old nerd. And I think if anybody has any other questions, I would love to chat about it with the budget. I had a citizen at Citizens College ask if I'd be willing to sit down with them and teach them of how mill levies work. And I'm like, absolutely. Like, that sounds exciting to me. So.
Well, thank you, Nikki. I appreciate you taking the time today for obviously all the hard work you and your team do to get this budget done every year. It is a minor miracle that this is able to happen every year. So great work, great job to you and your team both for doing that. And thank you again for all the work that you do here for El Paso County.
Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate you.
If you are interested in listening to additional episodes of Beyond the Dais, be sure to look for us on Podbean or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.